Good morning, everyone. Sagar, what's going on?
Oh, we have a great show today. We have presidential candidate Marianne Williamson, journalist Elizabeth Spears, the Bernie Sanders National Press Secretary, Paul Steinhauser is a New Hampshire political reporter, and an all-star panel.
It's going to be amazing.
All of that coming up today on Rise. Hello, everybody. Krystal, what is on your radar?
Well, folks, it is night one of Debate 2. So here's the lineup for the evening's events. Here's how I basically view the field tonight. You've got three progressives, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Marianne Williamson. You've got a pool of centrist middling candidates hanging around the 3 to 6% range in the polls. That would be Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and Beto. And then you've got the failing centrists, Tim Ryan, John Hickenlooper, and Steve Bullock, who are polling at less than 1% and fighting for their political lives like wounded animals backed into a corner. More on that in a moment. Now, what a lot of the mainstream media is hoping for tonight is some sort of epic battle royale of SummerSlam, perhaps, between Sanders and Warren. Politico's got the headline this morning. Warren and Bernie's awkward truce faces its biggest test yet. They would love nothing more than to watch the two progressives rip each other apart. But spoiler alert, that ain't going to happen tonight, and here's why. So we've talked about this a little bit already on this show, but I wanted to really lay out the most recent numbers so it'd be totally clear. If you dig into Warren's coalition and you dig into Sanders' coalition, you find something that may surprise you if you're mostly following mainstream outlets. They are actually appealing to very different voters. This shows up most clearly when you dig into the income levels of their supporters. So what do I mean here? Let's take a look at this recent Quinnipiac poll for Senator Warren. The higher you go on the income scale, the more support she garners. You can see that there. So she polls 11% of those making less than 50K, 13% of those between 50 and 100K, and 22% of those making over 100K. Now for Sanders, it's the exact opposite dynamic. He's got his strongest support among those making less than 50K and his weakest among those making more than 100K. And of course, we all know how billionaires feel about Senator Sanders. Now, every poll that I've looked at that asks about income shows this exact same dynamic. So this is a consistent trend that we're seeing throughout every poll. There's another big thing, though, that jumped out at me when I dug into the polling data, and that was Sanders' impressive strength with Latinos, which is not matched by Warren. I haven't really heard anyone else talking about this, but Bernie frequently performs better with Latinos than he does with white voters, and he often leads all candidates among Latino voters. So in the CBS News Battleground Tracker, Bernie's at 15% with white voters, 16% with black voters, and 19% with the Latinos. And in Quinnipiac's poll of California, that's the one you were looking at there, Bernie is the top vote getter of all the candidates among Latinos. He stands at 25%. And in Quinnipiac's poll of Texas, this one's a little bit older, so things may have shifted, but in this one as well, Bernie's also the top vote getter of all the candidates among Latinos, so an interesting note there. Now, most mainstream pundits just assume, because Bernie and Warren are close on the ideological spectrum, that they will be close on their voter coalitions. This just isn't how real people actually vote. In fact, Bernie's coalition looks much more similar to the coalition of his ideological opposite, Joe Biden. Warren's coalition looks much more like Buttigieg and Harris's coalition. So it just makes absolutely no sense for Bernie and Warren to go after one another tonight or any other night. Not to mention, some of us actually care about the cause. And if you care about the cause, you don't hurt your allies in the fight for change. Now, what I would expect tonight is for the failing centrists to come out swinging. Everyone watched how Harris's attack on Biden used her in the polls. We saw Julian Castro got a big bump for his relentless dunking on poor Beto. And Tulsi Gabbard became the most Googled candidate last debate after she informed Tim Ryan that it was not the Taliban who flew planes into buildings on 9/11. Ryan, Hickenlooper, and potentially Klobuchar and Bullock basically have nothing to lose and everything to gain by coming after the progressives. So I think that's what we're going to see tonight. It's not going to be progressive versus progressive. It's going to be a sort of cross-ideological SummerSlam, and may the best ideas win. Once again, the mainstream media has the totally wrong expectations of what's going to play out tonight.
I think they just really don't understand nuance, and that's what it takes in order to look into this. Because they're like, oh, well, both want to break up the bank, so they're both exactly the same.
It's like,
no. This is a completely different political coalition on both sides, a completely different theory on how to get all of these things done, and the lack of understanding on that part is why so many people have gotten this race just completely wrong, why Bernie is not. So even if Elizabeth Warren's numbers are going to continue to climb, that is going to come out of Buttigieg and Harris's support. It's not going to come out of Bernie Sanders.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I mean, it's just, I think it's very interesting and very important as this race develops to look at where people are getting their support from, because that tells you a lot, not only about how they're being viewed, but also what they're likely to be able to accomplish, because you have to have a multiracial coalition to be able to succeed in the Democratic primary ultimately. So something to keep an eye on.